Good morning, Maple Grove Junior High staff. My name is Wendy Bialis-Odell, and I am the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Educational Standards. And I hope you had a great summer. I'm excited to share with you today the work that's been done to support you in our third year of implementation of standards-based instruction and grading. Before we get started, I want to give you just a bit of background information. As many of you may know, Chris Rouleau and I spent time last year meeting with departments, teachers, students, and parents across our district to identify concerns around the implementation of standards-based grading. We heard two key points from the Maple Grove Junior High staff. First of all, it was too hard to get an A. There were many questions about the equal interval scale and how narrow it was at the top, and obviously not equal. And second, it was too easy to pass. We saw students who were passing classes with lots of missing work or work that was poorly done. I hope you will be pleased to hear that we listened to you. Last spring, a group of secondary teachers representing all 4 junior high schools and the 3 comprehensive high schools revised the rubric and grading scale to alleviate those issues. We no longer call it the equal interval scale, but the grading scale. We also heard that you wanted differentiated professional development and work time. In response to those requests, we are trying something new today. We're modeling our version of the flipped classroom.
Hi, I'm Chris Rouleau, Coordinator for Curriculum, Instruction, and Educational Standards. In a few minutes, you're going to hear from some of your colleagues their thoughts about the revised task rubric and grading scale that we'll be implementing this year. Standards-based grading is one piece of our larger standards-based instruction system. We live in a standards-based world. We know that you focus on standards when you teach and when you plan for instruction. We know that the standards are the things that you want your students to learn. Yet, we also know that in the last couple of years, with our focus on standards-based grading, our conversation has been largely centered on grading practices, and we haven't had as much system-wide conversation about teaching and learning as we should have. We're aiming to change that this year. The staff development assessment specialists who will be working in your buildings are there to support you in issues of instruction and student learning. And we're hoping that with the changes that we've made to both the rubric and the gradebook, you'll be able to spend less time worrying about grading practices and really focus your time and your professional conversations on student learning and instruction. You know that we're in our third year of implementation of standards-based grading. We've had our series of benchmarks that have been in place that have guided our implementation. Originally, this was a 3-year plan, but last year, based on feedback we had from teachers, we knew that we needed to make some changes. We do move at a pretty rapid pace in our district, but we also learned along the way. And one of the things we learned is that we needed to slow down long enough to get better at some of the things we were already doing. For example, if you take a look at the document you have in front of you with the standards-based grading benchmarks, you'll see that there is nothing new being implemented this year on that benchmark document. We're going to stay the course. We're going to keep the work moving forward, but we're going to continue working on things that were introduced last year or even the year before. 2 areas that we heard particular concern from teachers last year were use of the rubric for grading tasks and the scale that was in the TIES gradebook. Take a look at the rubric. You have it in front of you, and in just a moment I'm going to ask you to turn off the video and write a few notes down. Look particularly at the top, the 3 and 4 level, and at the bottom, at the 0 and 1 level. Notice how the language has changed, and jot down a couple of notes about how you think this could be helpful or what questions you still have about this. When I come back, I'll be sharing some thoughts from some of your colleagues. Now, I'd like you to hear what some of your colleagues have to say about using this rubric.
Hello, I'm Veronica Jones from Maple Grove Senior High. I teach math there, and I was a part of the secondary gradebook committee this past year, and I'm very excited about the work that we accomplished with the rubric and with the grading scale. I am really excited about the changes. I personally love where the descriptors have fallen with the numbers. It's long been my belief that a 2 was a good number to indicate that a student has minimally met what we'd like them to do, and then use the 3 to express that a student has shown more competency, and then a 4 to express that a student has really done the very best. As a math teacher, we're really talking about a process where they've shown a complete understanding of the process and also exhibited a level of accuracy, which in math class, it's process and the product is the final answer.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jones. I'm a science teacher at Park Center. I teach physics. I'm really excited about the clarity of the rubric. I feel like a lot has been fleshed out, especially in the 4 level and in the 1 and 0 level, to make it a lot easier to grade my students' work using that rubric. I think that will be really beneficial to my students.
Hi, I'm Chris Campia. I teach 8th grade English at Osseo Junior High School. I've been working with the Standards-Based Grading Committee since we started back in the day, and I'm really excited about the changes that were made to the secondary task rubric this year. I like the fact that we're very consistent in the language, and the 2 is still really important, but it's basic and simple. And I like the fact that 4 no longer says exceeds. That pressure there to do above and beyond what the standard says has been taken away. And so that's really, really helpful, I think, for student learning. I like the fact that on this rubric we've taken out the percentages in the criteria. That doesn't mean we can't use this rubric for the objective work that we do when we assess certain tests. But what that means is we look consistently and say, well, what does an 80% mean? Is an 80% a 3? And if an 80% is a 3, is it going to be, does 80% work as a 3 for everything that we do? So it just gives us a way to have some dialogue about those objective tests.
In just a moment, I'd like you to stop the video and jot down a few notes. What did you hear from your colleagues that's encouraging to you about using this rubric? How do you think it will help support student learning? When you're finished, push play, and we'll talk a little bit about the new grading scale that's in the TIES gradebook. One of the documents you have is a reprint of a letter that was sent to all secondary teachers right before the end of last school year. On the bottom of the front side, the grading scale that's in the gradebook is shown. This grading scale that was recommended by the grading task force last spring is based on the work of educational researcher Bob Marzano. This scale is adjusted at both the top and the bottom ends to be able to give students credit for their learning, but also to hold them accountable for doing their work and demonstrating that they really have learned. Take a look at the grading scale at the bottom of the front page of the letter and jot down a couple of questions or notes about your thoughts about using this scale. Then I'd like you to flip the page over and read the top 2 paragraphs. Those 2 paragraphs really address the adjustments that were made at both the top and the bottom end of the scale. Now I'd like you to hear from some of your colleagues about how they'll be thinking about using this grading scale with their students this year.
The second thing I'm really excited about with this is that the grading scale that's going to be used to average the student's number is research-based, and that there's a lot of work behind this, and that it's, I think, a scale that will really work well. It gives a lot of room at the top for students to achieve high grades, and it also gives a lot of room at the bottom where students will not be passing a class if they're not putting the work in, and I think that will eliminate a lot of frustrations that people were feeling last year.
I am also interested and excited about the new breakdown for the grading scale. I feel that it's going to meet some of my concerns about the tightness at the A level, so I'm going to be able to better express and identify where students have fallen in that A minus, and even B plus range. And I'm also excited to see that the bottom of the grading scale, that the students really have to develop a sense of understanding of what I need them to do, and that I'm going to be able to give scores that show that they're not there yet, and yet those scores won't artificially indicate that a student is achieving at a better level than they really are. It is my belief that if we really focus on the rubric and the language and the numbers, we can just use the grading scale in the grade book as an occasional reference point. I really plan not to fixate on these numbers and would encourage all of you not to fixate on where the numbers are, but use it as a guide and then immediately come back to the rubric. For instance, as I work with my team, I'm going to say to myself, let's look at this rubric. A 3 represents the bottom of the A range, the bottom of an A minus. So do I feel confident that if a student miraculously earned all 3s all year long in my class, does that represent an A minus in the work that I'm giving the student and the tasks that they're performing on? So once I get a sense of that sort of a thing with the grading scales and the breakout that's in the grade book, I'm going to set that aside, and then I'm going to use the rubric and feel confident that the numbers I give, be them 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, or 4, 3.5, 3, 2.5, 2, because there isn't anything about this that says that I can't use decimal points, but we want to make sure that those numbers we're giving for the tasks are representative of the student's performance relative to the language. And let's let the grade book then do the mechanics when it comes time to calculating the course grade at the end.
So one thing that I would really caution teachers with when they start looking at this, and one thing that we worked on really closely last year as we looked at this for the first time with our team, was making sure that you really understand what the rubric is saying and how that matches up with the grading scale. And once you understand that, or once you're confident in that making sure that when you assign a student a 3, you really believe that that work is a 3, and then putting it in the grade book and trusting that the grade book is going to come up with the correct score for the students, and that if you're really evaluating that the work that's at that good level and giving it a 3, that the students will end up with the grade that they want, and it will be accurate in the end as long as you're accurate in the beginning using the rubric. So I would just make sure that you really are focusing on that and giving a lot of attention to the level you're using your rubric at in the very beginning.
You know, just because we changed some of the language on the rubric and we've changed the grading scale that's in the gradebook, doesn't mean that options we've used in the past aren't still available to us. One of the things I plan on doing, which worked really well for me last year, was hiding the final letter grade and the percentage at the very bottom of the reports that the parents see. Then the focus for students and families is on the actual task grades and what the actual learning is. It got away a lot from the, well, I have an A minus, what do I need to do to get an A in your class, Mrs. Campia? It became more, okay, I have a 2 on this assignment, what can I do to help bring my grade up to a 3 or potentially a 4?
And the third thing that I'm really excited about is the collaboration and the multiple perspectives that went into coming up with this new system, the new rubric and the new scale. There was a whole bunch of us that worked all year long on coming up with this, and I think that in the end when we finally reached a decision, it was great that it was just unanimous around the table. Yes, we agree, we really like this, and I think that there were a lot of teachers that were involved, and that was really beneficial to see how it would exactly be impacting our classrooms and go back and look at our classroom data and how that would help here.
Thanks for watching our flipped classroom video. In a few minutes, you'll be joining with colleagues to have more discussion and reflection about what you've heard here. You'll have an opportunity to work with the rubric and the grading scale on assessments that you already have prepared and that you plan to use with your students. Please make sure to take at least one assessment and grading scale or rubric with you when you join with the rest of your colleagues. It'll be important for your work coming up.